begin this Sunday with a man just about everyone predicts will lose an election being held 2 weeks from now, half the world away from Washington, in Afghanistan. Before you reach for the remote, take a close look at the enormous stakes. By the end of this year, there will be nearly 70,000 U.S. troops in Afghanistan, stationed 23 battalions across the country like this. And remember, right here last weekend, the White House Chief of Staff said it would be irresponsible of President Obama to decide whether to send thousands more troops onto this battlefield before he knew whether there was the presidential election there would produce a partner he could trust. Let's take a look at that election. In the first round, the incumbent, Hamid Karzai, the official results gave him nearly 55% of the vote. His closest challenger is our guest today, Dr. Abdullah. He received half that. But the United Nations investigation found massive fraud, most of it benefiting President Karzai, knocked him down below to 50%. And then President Karzai last week bowed to intense international pressure and agreed to that runoff. The stakes are enormous for the people of Afghanistan, for the U.S. and NATO troops risking their lives, and for a first-year president of the United States whose strongest supporters oppose sending more troops, and whose most vocal critics accuse the commander-in-chief of dithering at a time they say he needs to be decisive. Dr. Abdullah, thank you for joining us on State of the Union. The runoff is fast approaching, scheduled for November 7th. And one question people have is, will it actually take place? There has been some talk of perhaps a negotiation, a power-sharing agreement between yourself and President Karzai. Are there any active negotiations underway at this point?
First of all, I hope that it will going to take place on the November 7th. The people of Afghanistan should see the outcome of the runoff and get to work and see their government of choice in place. There isn't any procedure, there isn't any negotiations in that regard, and we are all focused on the preparations for the runoff.
In the last campaign, you obviously thought there was considerable fraud, and you thought the government was complicit in some way in that fraud. President Karzai told our Fareed Zakaria this. He said there were some mistakes, there were some incidents of fraud, but the election as a whole was clean, and the result was clear. What do you think of that?
To call this as clean elections, I think this, with all due respect to Mr. Karzai, is a bit of ignorance, I should say. To say the least, this is like the fraud of the history. And unfortunately, the government was involved, IEC was involved. That's according to everybody. International observers, UNAMA, Elections Complaints Commission, the people of Afghanistan. So to ignore it or to just to deny it is not the solution. Yes, it was a step forward that the people of Afghanistan participated in the elections, but it wasn't a service to the people to ignore the institutions, the rule of law, and come up with such a process. But at the same time, one chapter is behind us. It led to the runoff, and we need to get it corrected in order to open the door for the new chapter. So denying it is not a solution. Rather than admitting it and correcting it will be responsible leadership.
Let's talk about some of those challenges going forward. You mentioned your concerns about fraud, and obviously the international community is hoping there will be a more clean election this time. But the UN Special Envoy himself said on Friday, "I do not expect I will be able to eliminate fraud in 2 weeks' time. I think that is beyond the realm of what is possible in such a short time." Are you worried we will have another contested, another perhaps corrupt election?
I'm very concerned about this, and I think I need to decide in the coming days on what to do about it. Of course, I will come up with sets of measures and conditions. That's to clean it up as much as possible. But we are not going to take our nation through the same saga. Lives have been lost in international soldiers as well as our own national army, national police and security institutions have made sacrifices. People lost their fingers because Taliban had threatened to cut their fingers, and they did so in some cases. Violence took place throughout the country. I lost many of my campaign people, campaign managers, and people who have voted for me. So this is a serious, serious thing. And if you think that we cannot exclude fraud this time around. So I don't want this upcoming opportunity to turn into another waste. So in that sense, I hope that together with the international community, we can come up with measures that, that ensures transparency and fairness of the elections.
And what is your own sense of the situation, the level of tension and the fear on the ground? For example, do you fear for your own safety in these final 2 weeks of campaigning?
It's not a secure environment, there is no doubt about it. But I don't spend a lot of time fearing about my own security, but I am worried and concerned about security of our citizens, our people. In some parts of the country, the war is going on, insurgency has taken root. And as a whole, security situation is not good. So it is a major concern, security.
Secretary of State Clinton was asked the other day about the runoff, and she said that she fully expects it to happen on November 7th, and she expects the incumbent, President Karzai, to win. Listen to Secretary Clinton.
I think one can conclude that the likelihood of him winning a second round is probably pretty high.
Is that helpful, and is that proper for the United States to be out there publicly saying they believe President Karzai will win?
No, I think Secretary Clinton has talked about the likelihood, probability, and there were times that earlier, before the elections, before the campaign, the likelihood of Mr. Karzai winning an outright, absolute majority in the first round was being talked about.
President Karzai has been asked about the possibility of a negotiated settlement, and he has said that that's simply not possible. He says it would have no legitimacy, but he also did tell Fareed Zakaria that, and it sounds like he means after the election because of the confidence in his voice, but that he is more than willing down the road to invite you into a government. I want you to listen.
If he wants to come and work in my government, he's most welcome. I'm known for consensus and building it, and for inclusivity, and that's a good trademark.
Is he, Dr. Abdullah, known for consensus and coalition building, and would you welcome a spot in a Karzai government should he win this election?
No, I think I left Mr. Karzai's government some 3.5 years ago, and then since then I have not been tempted to be part of that government, and my trust in becoming a candidate was not to be part of the same government and part of the same deteriorating situation. Mine was for a change in this country. Mine was for bringing hopes for the people of this country and making the people of Afghanistan true participants in their politics, in the governance, in the developmental process, in the security situation, and as a whole. So it's quite different from the criteria which Mr. Karzai has used with other people who are willing to join his government. So absolutely no interest in such a scenario, while at the same time, for the interest of my country, if Mr. Karzai is elected through a transparent and credible process, I will be the first person to congratulate him and wholeheartedly congratulate him and wish him well in this country and be in the opposition and pursuing the agenda for change, which is changing the highly centralized presidential system into a parliamentary system, going for elected governors, having a truly independent election commission, independent judiciary, promoting the political parties, having the chance and opportunity for equitable growth throughout the country, and many other things, which is part of my agenda. I'll pursue this in an opposition, provided President Karzai is elected as a result of a transparent and credible process. This will be my hope.
We're going to take a quick break, but when we come back, we ask Dr. Abdullah about the strength of the Taliban in Afghanistan and whether he believes President Obama should send thousands more U.S. troops.